So I want to start before I hand it over to Skip. You have some big binders. I know y'all commented on it. I heard people saying like new things. So we have all of your meeting material in here. In the front of the binder is this sheet of paper that tells you where you can find all the consortium material and recordings of the meetings online if you want to view them. We always post as public meeting law to post the agenda 2 weeks before and then post materials a week before. So if you're curious about what's coming up, haven't got an email or you missed an email, you can always go to this site and get all the information you need about the consortium. On the opposite side, you'll see that there's the agenda for today. And then we have some of the presentations in here, some others are online. And we also have this document that you all are very, very, very familiar with. So this is in here too for your reference, and we'll keep these binders and keep adding material to them so that you have them during the meeting. An update, we're really grateful, or I'm really grateful that Skip is here today. He's our only ELT member, so I was panicked this morning that he would hit traffic or get sick, but he's here, he's healthy, so that's perfect. Ben Cat is in Oscar Skip here. So Ben Cat is in Arizona. He's been down there for a couple of weeks, and because of the, as y'all know, the airport situation, he hasn't been able to fly out. His flight has been delayed, so he won't be here today. Hopefully he finds a flight today and makes it home. And then Dr. Skari, there's a big community college conference this week, and so that's where she is. But I'm just going to turn it over to Skip.
Great. So welcome everyone. I guess I'll call the meeting to order. Thanks for taking some time to join us today. In terms of just opening remarks, I had a chance earlier in October to go over to Estonia with a small delegation from Oregon. And just by way of background, I serve as honorary consul for Oregon to Estonia. That was part of the reasoning behind it. But what was interesting was I had a chance to meet with the architects behind AI Leap, which is an education program over there that was designed to replicate the success of something called Tiger Leap, which they started in the early 2000s. And that was designed to kind of address the three-legged stool of digital equity as it relates to education. So they provided ubiquitous internet access throughout the country in terms of infrastructure investments, and then they provided hardware where needed, so computers as well as training and education, making that a priority throughout their education system with STEM education. And in the last couple of years, they launched AI Leap, looking at where AI is kind of disrupting and reinventing education. And so they've created a bunch of experimental kind of environments and a culture, both on the academic or teacher side of it, and also in students. And they're the first country in the world to launch countrywide, every middle school. And it's still early, and they've found areas where obviously they think AI doesn't have a place in terms of pedagogy and everything else. And there's other areas where it's been kind of a game changer as it relates to more personalized education opportunities. And part of it is also not only using it, but understanding it. And then you can help shape it. There's a sense of agency. So that was kind of interesting. We'll have opportunities going forward across multiple layers of their government. They want to engage more with Oregon. So happy to continue to use them as a resource. Had a conversation last night with Representative Nguyen from the Economic Development Committee in the legislature. He wants to do some sort of like a workshop jointly, virtually, with some of their key people around IT modernization. So that could have implications potentially for some of the bottlenecks or pain points as it relates to workforce and education when it comes to IT in the state. Some lessons learned possibly there. And then I also had a chance to go to Indianapolis with Julie and a few other folks from the legislature and obviously the HEC represented around Illumina Foundation convening focused on updating state attainment goals for higher ed. And a couple themes that were there among the 14 states that they'd assembled. Obviously AI, what does that mean for changing higher ed standards? What are the requirements? Should hiring or hireability and employability be a factor there? And in what way does AI play a role in terms of skills? Another area was affordability. That's been a big barrier, perceived and otherwise, in a lot of surveys around higher ed attainment for many folks across the U.S. And then another area was just how do we kind of reimagine higher ed for the demands of today's workforce, which is requiring increasingly continuous learning, right? So where does higher ed begin and end? And so you can't really address one component of this continuum without looking at the whole thing. So there were some interesting takeaways there. There will be a group that's working here in the state to continue to share best practices with other states, learn and potentially update what's going on here in Oregon. So I just wanted to share that. And fortunately, we still have 3 more minutes before we can do the public comment. But at least before then, perhaps we could do approval of the old minutes.
Yep.
Cool. All right.
So the minutes are in your binders. Are they following the agenda? Yeah, they're following the agenda. So.
Yep. So these are from the July 24th, 2025 meeting. And assuming that everyone has read them diligently ahead of the meeting, wanted to see if there's a motion to approve the minutes from the July 24th, 2025 meeting. Is there a second? All right, thanks. All those in favor? Any opposed? No. Okay, great, thanks. Oh, go your stay back. Right. Okay. Thanks. 4 or 5 people abstaining, right? Yeah, perfect. Excellent. All right, and we got a couple minutes for public comment.
Yeah, we have some new faces here. So do you want to do a quick go around and just introduce yourselves and I don't know. Where Courtney, do you want to start?
Sure. Courtney Martin with Intel. Some of you may remember my colleague Melissa Evers was serving on the consortium. She's now still working with Skip, I'm sure, on a lot of other things in Oregon.
We reassigned her.
Continuing to contribute. Yeah, she's been reassigned to TAO. And I cover state and local government for our US sites based here in Oregon.
I'm Corinne Bouchard. I manage the recruiting and talent acquisition employee onboarding at BIAMP.
Wade Hopkins, Director of Northeast STEAM Coalition.
Steve Wu, the Associate Vice Provost for Academic State, worked mostly on undergraduate education, especially community college relationship with the university in this context.
I'm Kyle Ritchie Knoll, and I'm the Director of Education and Workforce Policy for the Oregon Pacific Council.
And I'm Matt Sayer, Executive Director of Collaborative EDO. We're a regional EDO down in Lane County. In Lane County, economic development and workforce are pretty well aligned in sort of a strategic fashion. So I'm actually standing in for Ashley Espinoza, who's the Executive Director of Lane Workforce Partnership. Good to be with you.
Good morning, Jeff Hampton, Regional Development Officer of Business Oregon, and I serve the Portland Metro region.
Jennifer Patel, Director for Future Ready Oregon at the Higher Education Coordinating Commission.
You all know me, Shauna Tice.
Yeah, you're very.
Andrew Goff, Executive Director of Work Systems, the Workforce Board for Washington and Multnomah County.
Amber Brownlee, I'm the Senior Manager of Labor, Workforce, and Community Engagement for Portland General Electric. I'm also the Executive Director of Oregon Clean Energy Workforce Coalition, which you'll hear a little bit more about today. And then I'm also the Chair of the Clackamas Workforce Partnership. So I very much love workforce, if you didn't know.
Jeff Rhodes, I'm with the Oregon Department of Education. I'm a career and technical education specialist who oversees our information communication technology programs in our state.
Kathy Hamilton, I'm a VP of Human Resources with Synopsys, and I'm currently doing purchase and acquisition.
Amy Vandervliet, I'm a regional economist covering the Portland metropolitan area with the Oregon Employment Department.
Joe Hewa, I'm the Director of the Career Accelerator at Lewis and Clark College, standing in today for Chris Hutchings, the Managing Director of the Bates Center for Entrepreneurship and Leadership, and perhaps will join the group in her stead. That proved.
I'm Eric Adair with the City of Sherwood, Economic Development Manager.
Great, thank you very much. And I think, Ronan, do we have public comment? No. Okay. Then we can move ahead, I think, to, we'll hear from Ben.
Yeah.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can.
We can.
Yes.
Great. Well, thanks for the invitation to spend a few minutes. I'm Ben Cannon. I'm the executive director of the HAC. I know many of you, but not all. So happy to share this table with you virtually. Really appreciate your work as a consortium. The efforts of the technology consortium, along with our other future ready consortia, I think are really important for advancing our state's economy, helping meet state workforce needs, helping higher education understand its role in kind of an evolving landscape and helping support business, employers, workforce development, state economy. So we're really excited at the HAC to have helped launch these and continue to support them. And you've got a great team with Shauna and Jennifer and Ronan and others. So I'm here to share a few minutes about the HEC strategic plan. So I'll jump into that, but I'm also happy to take questions on anything related to HEC and higher ed. Doesn't mean I'll have great answers, but time permitting, I'm happy to go down any of the sort of paths that I'll introduce to you via the commission's strategic plan. Really appreciate Skip for his participation. Most recently, he mentioned the trip to Indianapolis and the work that he will do alongside HEC staff, higher education leaders, some other business partners, labor partners in rethinking Oregon's educational attainment goals. So that is one sort of outgrowth of the strategic plan that the commission adopted last year that I'll present to you, but one of many pieces of work that we have underway as a result of this plan that the commission adopted last year. So as I think you all know, the Higher Education Coordinating Commission is a 15-member volunteer body appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate. I report to it. We are a state agency with a commission governing board, and it sets our strategic directions. It works closely with the staff and with partners, and over the course of a couple of years leading up to the end of last year, the end of 2024, we met individually. We had a contractor supporting us. We met individually with a lot of leaders. We had small group focus sessions around the state. And online surveys, collected a lot of input, went through various rounds of drafting, and in late 2024 adopted a new vision, mission, values, goals, and strategies that should guide the HEC's work over the next 5 years. And I appreciate the opportunity to sort of share a little bit about that as this consortium engages in your strategic goal setting and approach to the technology sector through the course of today's meeting and ones that will follow, because I think there's a lot of overlap and a lot of synergy that we can find between what the HAC has done and what you all will be doing. This slide, I'll just start. It's really a pretty straightforward attempt to articulate the HEC's mission. So we're not yet into strategies. This is really, we understood mission through this process. Is what does the HEC actually do? Because frankly, there are a lot of things we don't do. We are not instructors of learners, right? We don't deliver higher education and training directly to Oregonians. So it's important to define through this mission statement what it is, what the core activities are that we provide and perform for the state of Oregon. And they're listed here. I won't go through every one of these categories, but we have staff and programs and activities assigned really in each of these 6 categories that you see on the left-hand side. And you see that what we're really driving towards is equitable post-secondary access and success for all Oregonians, anticipating and meeting workforce and economic needs, and strengthening Oregon's collective future through these kinds of activities that higher education and workforce development conducts throughout the state. I can go to the next slide. And this is where we get into the really goals and strategies. And this is as far as I'm going to take it in terms of the slide detail. There is a whole plan. It fits on 2 pages, so it's not extensive, but it's there's a link at the bottom of the slide. I don't know if you can see it. I can't. But at the bottom of the slide, there's a link to our strategic plan where you could read each of the 18 strategies that are associated with these 5 goals. But I'm not going to go even to that level of detail in my presentation. I do want to acquaint you with these 5 main goals and give you a sense of the type of activity that will occur or is occurring as a result of the Commission's commitment to these goals and the strategies associated with them. So each of the strategies, each of the 18 that you're not seeing, is identified with one of these 5 goals. And the first of them is relevance, and we talk in the plan about improving the responsiveness of Oregon's education and training systems to the needs of learners, employers, and communities. And your work as a consortium is pretty directly related to that particular goal. Goal 2, alignment, gets at the need to better connect and align our systems of education, really from high school through post-secondary education into the workforce to create more straightforward pathways for learners. Goal 3 relates to affordability and access, pretty self-explanatory. This one, a lot of this amounts to a question of state and public funding, and it is also about institutional activity that can help to lower costs for learners. Goal 4 relates to the experience of learners in education and workforce training. We talk about this in terms of belonging, helping to elevate learner voices and supporting inclusivity and belonging in all post-secondary learning settings. And number 5, it's titled leadership. Really the emphasis here, if you look, we're looking at the strategies, is on an increasing HEC role in the economic development needs of our state. And so the shorthand here is to infuse post-secondary education, workforce development, research, and innovation into Oregon's economic development strategies. The premise, I think the Commission's view, is that as Oregon has attempted to build and develop its economy, it has under-leveraged higher education and workforce development. There are tables that we can and should be at to help support economic development in Oregon, whether that means retaining a business that wants to grow here, or attracting a new one, or producing the kind of knowledge that will result in business creation in the first place. So there's a sort of a new area of emphasis for the Commission in Goal 5. So, like I said, the plan, which you can find on our website, goes on from these 5 goals to establish 18 more specific strategies. And then we, as a staff, in consultation with our Commission, are developing action plans associated with those 18 strategies. And so, for example, in connection with our relevance goal, listed here as Goal 1, we are working. Our staff is working with groups to create, update, or significantly expand access to between 1 and 5 industry-related credentials before the end of this year. So we've created this objective for ourselves that we will, in working with employers and employer representatives, education and training representatives, help to build out the deployment of new or expanded industry-related credentials in Oregon. A lot of other activity associated, again, with each of the goals here, but did want to note that. I'm happy to share more, respond to questions, or give you back the time.
Any questions for Ben? Okay. I don't think you need it, but you can try.
Ben, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hi, thank you for the update. This is Courtney Martin with Intel. I love the piece you mentioned on the being part of the economic development strategy, and I'm thinking back to, gosh, I think it was at the Portland Metro Chambers, one of their annual meetings, that OSU kind of launched an economic impact report, and as a way to kind of think more broadly about their impact in the state. And I know OBC's kind of been leading some initiatives on that, like the Willamette Valley area. Any other like early thoughts on what that might look like in terms of how we engage the higher ed community differently or what they lean into more in order to enable that goal?
Yeah, so there, I'm glad you mentioned OSU, and it's, I think, really terrific and expanding leadership in the economic development space, and we're working closely with them. Yeah, I mean, I think that this takes a lot of different forms, right? So I'll start pretty small and with something that we can help to control directly within our agency, our relatively small agency, which is a closer relationship with Business Oregon, so that as our state's economic development agency, which we are not, that's not in our title, it is in Business Oregon's title and mission, that as they are working with employers or prospective employers who have questions about or needs related to workforce development, there's someone at the HAC, someone at our state agency who they can call, who can in turn work with the higher education community, whether it's community colleges or public universities or private institutions, to identify and the workforce sort of development pipeline, or help to create, and this may even require partnership with the legislature, but help to create that pipeline of workers that a company, prospective company, expanding company needs in order to really feel secure and confident in Oregon. So that's a small sort of tactical piece of this equation that we're working on, is making sure that there's a sort of an office, a home within the HEC for having that conversation, and someone, you know, that whether it's state level economic development officials at Business Oregon or regional or local economic development officials, they know who they can call at the state when they're trying to figure out where will higher education be. Obviously, that's one that sort of business recruitment and retention piece is one small component of economic development in a higher education context, and you certainly hear this and see this from OSU and U of O, and to some extent Portland State University. The a more sort of concentrated state focus on university research in connection with state economic development needs and goals is something that we are very eager to support. Again, likely in partnership with the legislature, potentially with funding from the legislature. We think there's tremendous opportunity to grow in sort of targeted ways, grow Oregon's research and innovation portfolio to help companies that have needs, or help create companies that haven't been imagined yet as a result of knowledge creation, research, and development. So those are a couple of the sort of types of areas that we're thinking about when we describe under Goal 5 this increased state role in economic development via higher education. There are many, many others. And so eager to work with you, Courtney, with the consortium. If you have ideas, suggestions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Thank you. Hey, Director Cannon, Jeff Hampton with Business Oregon, and Courtney got in front of me. I had a question about number 5 as well. Hopefully you can hear me all right. I guess the thing I would add, and thank you for that description, that's helpful to hear and understand. Our agency is undertaking a statewide economic development strategic plan, and I know you worked with our director, Horn, and know her well and work well together. So I just wanted to flag that to ensure that as we're working on our plan, that that's a great place for you to engage with our agency as well. So thanks for that explanation around the leadership goal. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
And I'll just add, Ben might not know this yet because I haven't talked to him about it, but I did met with the economic development strategy team recently to talk about some of the ways that there are alignment both in our strategic plan and Business Oregon strategic plan, but specifically talking about tax incentive program and modernization effort there. So great. I think there's some really strategic ways that we can align the bodies of work and definitely see some opportunities for the consortium to help inform that.
Well, we've recently gone through incentives modernization, a series of focus groups and outreach meetings with a number of folks across the state. And that piece of it's really critical for business retention, for business recruitment, but also as we think about potential future legislation or policy that gets at the workforce needs that we have. It's one of the things we tout as an agency and as a state in relation to, in particular, technology and the strength of our workforce that way. And it's something we feel we just absolutely have to continue to invest in as a state. So appreciate that. Thanks, Jennifer.
I know that this consortium, among other things, has looked closely at job profiles and sort of labor market data to try to sort of grapple with the question of what employers in the technology sector demand today and what their projected future requirements are. And so I won't sort of take that on specifically, but I will make a claim about higher education in the role of in the context of the future workforce and the future economy of the state. I know that we are in a moment nationally, and I think it's true in Oregon too, where there is some skepticism, broadly speaking, about the value of post-secondary education, particularly in the context of increasing costs to students and families, AI, which obviously raises a lot of questions, as Skip noted in his report from Indianapolis, about the future of higher education. And when we look at the sort of baby boom retirement and the demands that this state will undoubtedly have for physicians, for engineers, for nurses and teachers and social workers, and go on down the list. And I assume and expect, though defer to you, that technology is on that list too. There is now is not the time to be. I'm not suggesting anybody on the consortium would have this perspective, but I know broadly I run into people who do, and now is not the time for us to be turning our back on post-secondary education as a key for the future of the state's prosperity and well-being, and for individual and family prosperity and well-being. So again, I'm that gives me energy for the work today, in spite of the challenges. Like, there is a need, and it's very easy and appealing to say, well, the world's changing. Maybe it doesn't, maybe we don't need as much higher education. And maybe we don't need as many, I'm very open, maybe we don't need as many bachelor's degrees. Maybe we don't need as many PhDs. There are undoubtedly some mismatches. But post-secondary education beyond high school, as a requirement for most Oregonians, both to serve their own needs in terms of living wage and to serve the state and our employers' needs and community needs, I think is indisputable.
And I might just add, this group has really flagged not only the workforce needs of the tech sector, but the tech-enabled workforce needs across all sectors, and just thinking about not only the replacement workforce that Ben was talking about, but the opportunities to upskill and reskill the incumbent workforce to be competitive in a much more tech-enabled environment. And that's something that we see this consortium being able to really lean into.
Well, have I
Oh, there you're back.
I did not hear anything. I got silence. We heard silence.
We're just thanking you for your time and your participation today. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great meeting. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay. Next, we have Todd, who's also joining us online, I believe.
And for your reference, the PEC strategic plan 2-pager is in your binder behind the second tab. And the Workforce and Talent Development Board strategic priorities are also in your binder, which Todd will be speaking to behind the third tab.
Thanks, everybody. Just trying to figure out the tech. Can you hear me okay and see me okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to attempt to share my screen. It's a little funky in my end. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hang on just a second. Okay, I think I have it. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for your patience on the tech. It's a new thing for me that just happened, but I think I got it figured out. It's good to see you. I say see you under quotes because I really can't make you out. But thank you so much for being here this morning. I just wanted to give you a quick sort of overview and update on the WTDB. So I'm going to try and go here pretty quickly for Shauna to make sure that she has plenty of time for you to chat and strategize a little bit later on in the meeting. So a little bit about the Workforce and Talent Development Board. Many of you already know this, but we have a myriad of roles and responsibilities as Oregon State Workforce Board. And as you know, the Technology Consortium is advisory to the WTDB on sector-specific input, informing and identifying skills gaps, training needs, and industry priorities to inform workforce and talent development in the policy area, as well as investment and strategy. The WTDB plays also consultancy role to Ben Cannon, whom you just heard from as the executive director of HEC, and to the Higher Education Coordinating Commission. And Ben helps with that interplay as he is a member of the Workforce and Talent Development Board. So many of you may recognize this, which is the front page of our 3-page WTDB strategic plan, where we call out our vision of equitable prosperity for all Oregonians. And we do that via a mission of empowering Oregon's workforce and employers by informing and shaping an inclusive, coordinated training and education system that's responsive to their needs. The WTDB also has articulated the position and reputation that it strives to uphold in this first document of the 3-page strat plan in the work that we do together. And I would say over the last year or so, maybe a little bit longer back, we added this bottom section in response to needs and requests from board members to really highlight and keep us focused on our values and agreements in terms of how we really show up together and how we conduct our business. And I would say it's been very successful. So our marching orders here are further detailed on page 2 of the plan. And I don't have to say advance the slide, Guthrie, because I do have the slide control. So on to page 2 of the strategic plan. I just wanted to highlight a few things. You can see here that our imperatives are called out, which are inclusive workforce system, that advances equitable prosperity. Secondly, that we have a strategic alignment of this system and the partners toward shared workforce goals. Thirdly, clear understanding of and improved use and impact of the workforce system itself. And last, and I would venture to say most importantly, accountability around the workforce system leadership. The plan also, as you can see, includes corresponding objectives for each of these 4 imperatives. And I'll call out a few, around increasing understanding and awareness on systemic barriers, increased access, the sparking and scaling of innovation, systems alignment through data and meaningful goals, increasing user and customer awareness, while consistently and directly communicating with the governor's office and others. On the final page of our strategic plan, you can see the 18 board metrics that we are focused on as a board. I'm not going to dive deeply into these. As Jennifer mentioned earlier, I think you probably have a copy of this in front of you or soon will have as you move into your workshopping session of the agenda. So please take a look at these to better understand what we're focused on that's helping drive our work. And I'd say we're making pretty good progress, and we're working more closely, really than ever, I think, with staff over at the Office of Workforce Investments at the HAC, who are intentionally tracking and assigned individually to these different board metrics to really help us stay on top of it, track progress, and drive outcomes. We're also going to be, as those of you who are on the state board or in some of the committees of the state board, you'll be noticing that we're going to be providing regular status progress reporting to the exec full board, and also via our quarterly report out to the Higher Education Coordinating Commission, which Sherry Dunn, as chair of the board, typically handles. So with that said, obviously the strat plan and scorecard drive our work, but I would say these committees that we have highlighted here also do, including the Workforce Readiness Committee, the Metrics Task Force, and our Continuous Improvement Committee. Shout out to Andrew McGough. I think I saw you sitting out there, and for all the help that you have provided in the work on the Continuous Improvement Committee back upstream. And likely behind the scenes now as Ashley Espinoza with Lane Workforce Partnership has sort of taken over the role as co-chair with, or co-staff with me rather. So the Workforce Readiness Committee has 3 focus areas, including Oregon employability skills, STEM AI tools, and CTE. And the work has really resulted in significant scale of employability skills work around the state. Another hats off, Andrew, to sharing that at the Portland City Club. And for students across K-12 and several community colleges, this employability work has happened. Other benefits realized have been significant increase in relationships, partnerships, and alignment between multiple agencies, schools, colleges, and universities. Moving over to the performance measures, it and the metrics task force are connected because in May of this year, the WTDB received a letter from Governor Kotek with expectation from her that across the state enterprise, we would deliver excellent customer service for Oregonians. She expects the WTDB in her letter, as she articulated, to achieve the goal through data and outcome-driven approaches and by assessing how programs affect our citizens in setting and tracking metrics, not to mention creating plans to meet our goals. The governor also in that letter reaffirmed that the WTDB has the authority to hold state and workforce agencies and local workforce boards accountable for reaching performance goals and systems outcomes. Governor Kotek directed in the letter the WTDB to stand up a reporting system and associated metrics. And so those are what those two bullets correspond with. So once this work is complete on the reporting system and the associated metrics within the public workforce system, a metrics task force will be stood up and track reporting per the agreements within the public workforce system tracking, and then also develop additional metrics to drive goal attainment within the overall workforce systems. The KIC's primary focus is really statutorily mandated, and it's a biennial assessment of the public workforce system or WorkSource Oregon. And that biennial assessment goes over to the governor's office, to the legislature, agency leadership, local workforce boards, and really the public and partners, writ large. And I think Andrew and I and other folks have definitely seen that this work has resulted in improved connectivity and relationships with the governor's office. I think that letter I just mentioned is a good indication of that connectivity, as called out as gold on the strategic plan. And I think it's also resulted in better connectivity and relationships with other state agencies than the HEC and partners around things like systems alignment. So moving on to the next slide, there's other things that the State Workforce Board does that really sort of drive work in the workforce and talent development space. Those are, shown here, including the Talent Summit and the launch of the biennial Oregon Talent Assessment. The talent assessment, as many of you know, assesses the current market for skills using quantitative as well as qualitative data that highlight business and industry's input on demand, occupation, skills, talent, gaps, and trends, not unlike much of the work you're doing here on the technology consortium. We also do other reports and assessments from time to time. It's kind of our gig in terms of deliverables within task force work and other work groups. So speaking of assessments and reports, I thought it might be helpful in your work that you're planning on doing a little bit later on in the agenda to just remind you and sort of re-inform or inform some of you that may have not seen the 2024 Oregon Talent Assessment, some of the things that were called out. So there were basically 3 high-level success strategies and some corresponding action items that really were intended to help with alignment of partners and improve infrastructure of the workforce development ecosystem through new initiatives, leveraging existing and increased collaboration. The first strategy you see here is to align and strengthen Oregon's workforce ecosystem. And the action steps are called out that correspond on how to do that around alignment, data, reporting, which makes sense, right? The governor in her letter highlighted those 2 sort of areas of action: promoting K-12 collaboration, which we're doing a lot of in the WTDB Workforce Readiness Committee, and modernizing education. On to strategy number 2, which is around promoting efforts that increase workforce development and access, as well as equity and the corresponding action steps. And then the last, strategy 3, is about supporting Oregon's target industries and occupations through attraction, retention, and lifelong learning. So I wanted to sort of close out, I guess, with a bit of a summary here of what I've touched on, listed, and then also just say that, this is a lot of stuff. the workforce system writ large is complex. One of the things that staff recently did was turn to AI to compare the WTDB strategic plan with the HEC strategic priorities to really better understand the commonalities and overlap. Where can we target leverage points, right? And we're excited about some of the initial results that we've been able to glean from utilization of AI. Venkat would be proud. And, one of the things I was thinking as I was preparing for this presentation was how we continue to use it to refine priorities and focus. And maybe it's something that you already have done. I don't know, Shauna and Jennifer and y'all, with sort of thinking about how the interplay works between the WTDB, the HEC, and the three consortium, including this one. So last slide, and then I'll conclude. One of the things that Shauna and I thought would be good as I close out was to show this slide, and then say as you move through the agenda and reflect on what you're hearing and learning, we thought it'd be good to sort of keep in mind, obviously, common themes, redundancies or gaps, where there's opportunities to collaborate between the consortia and the WTDB. Maybe think about what the flow looks like and a potential sort of process map, and really keeping in mind sort of the key goal of how can we have the greatest impact. So I'll conclude my presentation and then entertain any questions any of you may have.
Anyone have questions for Todd? I really appreciate the title of your last slide there, Partnering with Purpose, which honestly, that's what I would name this whole meeting if there was a theme or a title for it. So I appreciate you including that and speaking to it.
Yeah, you bet.
Oh, Courtney, any question?
Yeah. Hey, Todd, this is Courtney from Intel, and this question is very much coming from a seek to understand, because I just don't know the answer. There's no hidden agenda by it. But you mentioned the objective on supporting key industries. I think it was the third one in that last series of things you referenced. And so what are your primary touch points and input places with industry? Like, is it the reps on your board? Is it this group? Is it who fills out the talent assessment? How do you get your intelligence on that? And is it working well for you all?
Yeah, I think, Courtney, thank you for the question. And thank you, Shauna, for acknowledging that last slide. Yeah, I think it's a combination of several things. I think it is membership on the State Workforce Board. We're required by federal law to have a majority, so over 50% of the membership to come from the business community. So we have a good mix of cross connectivity with your group, because folks that sit on your technology consortium as well as manufacturing and healthcare consortia also sit on the WTDB. So obviously that was intentional. I think other ways we connect and get intel are clearly through the talent assessment, which always includes outreach, engagement, and information gathering from the business community. I think we do that through assessments and reporting projects, research projects that we do, as I said earlier, in typical deliverables for our committees, work groups, task forces that invariably and intentionally include the business community, the business and industry, to make sure that we're capturing as relevant and up-to-date intel as we can. I think another key place that this occurs is connected to membership. And one of the things I'm thinking of as I see Brooke Brownlee sitting there is sort of the historical evolution of the Clean Energy Workforce Coalition and all the work that was done behind the scenes before it was actually stood up. And I would say, Brooke, if I'm remembering correctly, that had a lot to do with partnering with Portland General Electric and other private sector businesses, as well as nonprofits and other public sector partners to ultimately, get it where it is today, which, I mean, it's had amazing success. So I think, Courtney, we get intel from a lot of different places, including the local workforce boards. When we go to the talent summit, we're working together, which is the one that Andrew and his colleagues really lead. I think makes me think of you again, Brooke Brownlee, as an example of the networking that occurs at those events. It's really invaluable. And again, I think it's a myriad of partners, but there is typically really good representation at those events from the business community. And I see Kyle sitting there with Oregon Business Council. I think that's another critical resource for intel from Kyle Ritchie-Knoll and Duncan Wise in terms of what they know about and share with the WTDB, with staff and other leadership in terms of representation on their business roundtable. I think another place, and then I can't think of anything else to really answer your question that we get good intel from, is the economists that we work with on a regular basis and other consultants and contractors on the WTDB. For example, Echo Northwest, SRI was the company out of DC that helped us with our 2024 talent assessment, and also the amazing research shop over at the Oregon Employment Department. So I think we have good hard data and softer anecdotal data that informs a lot of the work that we do. I think there's always opportunity for improvement there, though.
I don't see any more questions from Todd, so thank you. I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Next up, we're going to hear from Kyle about the work of the Semiconductor Consortium, because I know there are a lot of connections between the work of her consortium and the work that we do here. So this is another opportunity for us to look for collaborations or other things that we could do to increase our impact. Right.
Great. Well, thanks for the opportunity to be here today and talk about the work we're doing with the Semiconductor Consortium. Sean is right. There are lots of areas of alignment, and both heard those as well from both Todd and Ben. So I think it's great that we're continually thinking about how all this work really complements and elevates and really aligns. So I am Kyle Ritchie-Knoll, as I said, and I work for the Oregon Business Council. I lead our workforce and talent development work and a lot of other stuff. In a 4-person shop, you end up doing just a little bit of everything. And OBC is a CEO roundtable. So we're modeled after, you may be familiar with the business roundtable at the national level, and many states also have executive roundtables. We have about 45 members around the state, and they come to OBC to work on public policy issues and big sort of systemic challenges. And our lenses really are about economic health and economic mobility for Oregonians. So those are the issues that we look at. Education and workforce development has been a foundational issue of OBC because it's really the issue that many businesses, will identify as the most critical. If they don't have the workforce, they won't be able to really grow and innovate. In 2022, OBC was instrumental in leading something called the Semiconductor Competitiveness Task Force. That was right when all of the CHIPS Act at the national level was coming together, a lot of funding. We know, given Oregon's semiconductor presence, that we had an incredible opportunity to make sure that Oregon was well represented in that. So the Senator Wyden, Maria Pope from PGE, and then Governor Brown convened this task force. Many of you in this room were a part of it, and we looked at really what were all the factors that were important in the competitiveness of this industry. And there were, I believe, 5 areas. One of them, of course, was workforce. I was able to staff that work, but we had recommendations that came out of that have really set the stage for the work that we do through the consortium, and we've been able to pull together many people to come around those particular strategies. So next slide, please. One of the things that was called for in the competitiveness task force was really greater collaboration, greater alignment, greater coordination across the board. And so we were able to put together the Semiconductor Talent Consortium. And like this consortium and the healthcare and manufacturing and the work that you're going to hear from Brooke, it's really about coming together through shared leadership to collectively build this diverse workforce, meet the current and the emerging needs, and advance the workforce opportunities for all Oregonians. And one of the early things we were able to do is partner with the HEC on a semiconductor talent assessment. So between the work of our subcommittee on the competitiveness work and then the more quantitative and qualitative work that came out of our talent assessment, we were able to really direct this consortium toward developing a shared talent strategy. Next slide, please. So the thing that I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, I hope you all can sort of recite these sorts of missions. When we think about this consortium work, we at OBC really approach this from a place of we're not creating an initiative. We're really trying to work with all the partners in this work to change the system, to change the way that we think about workforce and talent development. So it starts first with getting employers organized, thinking about their mutual needs, encouraging them and equipping them to think about the needs as a sector. You know, we've traditionally had an employer with a challenge work with a workforce board or an higher ed institution. They come up with a wonderful solution to that. It isn't necessarily sustained. It isn't necessarily available to the entire sector, to the system to improve. So those are the things we're doing. We're really trying to encourage our partners to look at this long-term strategic focus as opposed to kind of a transactional crisis. We'll still have plenty of those, but continuing to think about the long term. We want this alignment we've been talking about today, and really thinking, which I think we've learned so much from the Future Ready Consortia and the grants, about these innovative pathways, what it takes to really engage Oregonians to make sure that folks in Oregon really have opportunity to enter those pathways, and what are the supports and the innovative programs that they need. And this is building off of the work that the workforce boards have been doing a long time, trying to figure out how we really scale that work across and have industry learn from it. So next slide, please. I just wanted to give you a sense of the 40+ folks who are part of our consortium. And I think that really that the top few lines there where you see, I think we're up to 17 companies now. This is a group of really active and committed employers. We meet regularly, they share challenges, they're diving in to come up with a solution. So I think it is the thing that really sets our work apart when we look at other efforts around semiconductors across the country. Really being industry led and guided is so important, because if we're meeting their needs and preparing Oregonians to really be able to come into those positions, then we will, have done our work well. But we're guided by the partners in community-based organizations and education and other groups that really have helped us understand if these are the goals of the needs of industries, these are the things that we need to do to really meet those needs. And I will say we partner very closely with an effort out of Oregon State called FAST, which is Frontiers for Advancing Semiconductor Technology. This is a regional innovation engine, and Oregon has been identified as one of 15 finalists. And so on December 1st and 2nd, if the government reopens, we will have an in-person visit. And this is such an incredible opportunity for Oregon. It's about $160 million over 10 years. With a really extensive set of investments in education and workforce. And we've set it up so that our talent strategy is really one and the same. I am the director of workforce for the FAST effort, and again, just to really create this alignment. And so in total, we have about 95 members between the two coalitions. All right, next slide, please. So our vision really is to be the global leader. We really want to be a national model in semiconductor talent development. And we want to be certain that the work we do really meets industry needs and is boosting economic mobility for Oregonians. And the goals are really about increasing the total number of post-secondary credentials and degrees. We heard Ben say maybe not everybody is going to need that bachelor's, but we know that almost everyone is going to need a post-secondary credential. We have about 2,000 that are now semiconductor-related credentials and degrees that our institutions now produce. Our companies have identified that they projected 2,500 new jobs per year over the next decade. We know that our institutions are graduating about 2,000, but even more troubling is that after 5 years, about 400 of those are employed in the semiconductor sector. So we have a lot of work to do to get more individuals interested in semiconductor and STEM-related fields in general. And we have a big job to do to bring this industry sort of out of its invisible place so that people understand the opportunities. And then, of course, we want to increase the diversity and really broaden participation in the industry. Slide. I just talked to this. I forgot that I put this in. But this is the work we're doing to really understand how do those break down? I think it's really important. I assume most people know this, but you may not. So Oregon has 15% of the semiconductor workforce in the nation. Considering we have about 1.2% of the population, it's really incredible. We trail California and Texas. So Oregon has this very diverse workforce from entry-level manufacturing and production positions that may require a credential or perhaps an associate's degree, all the way up to like the nation's leading research, design, and innovation. So these are treasures that we want to be certain, again, that we are setting this national model. We're protecting what we have in Oregon and making it available to many more folks. Next slide. So this is part of the work that came out of the semiconductor talent assessment. I realize it's a lot on this slide. And the message I would want you to carry away is that this traditional path of finishing high school, going into community colleges, or colleges and universities and into your career for the next 35 years, that really doesn't work for many people. And especially as we look at that big challenge of trying to get more folks interested and employed in this industry, we know we need to turn to the incredible talent that is already in Oregon. And of course, we will always recruit from out of state. These companies will recruit the best talent anywhere in the world. But we know that we have an opportunity to think about much more accessible, flexible on-ramps and off-ramps. So thinking about those stackable, portable, transferable credentials and supporting individuals as they come in and out of work, where they're learning and getting credentials and then coming back into employment. All right, next slide. So as we did our work and really zeroed in on the most critical needs for industry, we came up with these 4 imperatives. They were initially industry developed and they've evolved. Then we went and really shared it. I think we conducted 35 different interviews with many people in those meetings to really understand, are these the priorities? What is the support that you need? We heard from our community-based organization, we can get them engaged. We need your help explaining this industry. Courtney was in those meetings. They're saying, we hold up, the wafer that you gave us. We're like, this is a wafer. We need much more help understanding how do we talk about this industry? How do we explain why it matters? What changes it's really impacting in the world? How do we get folks excited about it? So that was one example of some really specific feedback that we heard from our education and community partners. Essentially, though, these are the priorities that we have really decided to work at to meet those goals. And so we want to raise awareness and ignite interest, and that's across the board. Our early learners, but it's also at the university level where there are a lot of engineering, chemists, physicists who really don't know anything about this industry. And so we're doing a lot of work across that to really help make semiconductors a little less invisible. We are really, again, along trying to think about how to improve the quality, how to get really highly skilled graduates so that our Oregon companies will hire them, and looking again at experiential learning, and that is across the board. Many of these goals really are K-12 all the way through career. The experience looks different when you're doing experiential learning with fourth graders than it might at a university level, but each of them apply across. We're looking, as I said, for these agile pathways. So beginning at CTE, mechatronics, and how that might look at dual credit and move into the community colleges or university programs. We're also looking at how can we take associate degrees and move into an engineering pathway for a working adult. So a lot of work to do there. And then we cannot, we cannot overstate the importance of the foundational STEM skills. We have a lot of work to do in Oregon. Our math scores are among the lowest in the country. And at a time, that is just a gatekeeper for so many individuals. So really deeper exposure to the content of science and math, but also just exposing young learners to all the things that are part of STEM education. So the hands-on, the inquiry, the problem solving, the teamwork, all of those things are important. And we're working closely on the STEM education plan, which I think Ben Kat's going to talk about later. Okay, next slide. So this is just to give you an example. I'm not going to read these, but these are, what are some of the things that we can do? So awareness campaigns, educator externship programs, flexible pathways, STEAM efforts that are working with our partners who are engaging historically underrepresented individuals. So at a high level, this gives you an example of the kinds of things we're working on. Next slide. And these are specific examples of the kinds of programs that the consortium and our partners have created, many of which, some of which were funded by Future Ready Oregon Workforce Ready grants. Some of them came directly from legislative investments where they invested in semiconductor training. Others, we have, industry has supported it. Some of them, again, we are creating as a consortium. So this is really a set of best practices that I think others around the country are looking into Oregon as well to see the kinds of things that we're doing here. Next slide. So in terms of the impact, as I said, we have a coalition of 95 organizations from employers, workforce, education, and community-based organizations. We have this aligned strategy. We very much continue to connect our work to that strategy so that we move forward together. I talked about the talent assessment, and I think, we've been able to earn more than $32 million in semiconductor talent investments, including very recently, the governor moved some of the CHIPS dollars into the Semiconductor Talent Sustaining Fund. $1.5 million of that will go to AI ambassadors at the higher education level, and that's in partnership with NVIDIA. But we have another $8.5 million that will be invested in semiconductor talent development. And the great news is that we have done the work with the partners. We have identified priorities. We know which programs are working. And so it's great to have been prepared and have the strategy that's ready to share in that regard. A couple other things I wanted to talk about. I guess I already talked about the FAST initiative. This is a huge initiative for Oregon. It's the only one on the West Coast. We have all of those folks running. It's really taking the work in the Silicon Forest and bringing it down into the southern Willamette Valley and over to Central Oregon and thinking really deeply about company formation, about research, and about talent. So it's very exciting. And then we will be applying, this is a busy month. So the 1st and the 2nd, we have the site visit for this. On the 8th, my organization puts on a little event every December with 1,200 friends. And then we have this proposal due on the 22nd of December. And that is for Oregon to be the regional node for a workforce initiative at the national level. They'll be appointing 4 of these regional nodes across the country, and we think Oregon should be the place to lead that. So fingers crossed. Again, I will just say that the organization, the collaboration, and having the strategy are what really makes us available and on people's radar for that. And that, again, is the work we're all doing. Both here, you'll hear from Brooke, similar themes, and I think the consortia, the Future Ready Consortia, are also in that position. And I think that's it. Yes, so thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. Yes, please.
Just a quick one. I was curious about that 20% after 5 years stat. Does that include those that may leave the state for semiconductor related employment elsewhere?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think it was those who were employed in Oregon-based semiconductor companies.
Yeah, I'm not thrilled about people leaving the state
Right.
After, and we want to keep them here, but I appreciate that.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty certain because we were really looking at who's employed in the industry and how big is the gap. I'd have to conduct a talent assessment, but I think it was a measure of, looking at who's actually coming.
I had kind of the same question on that 20%, which is do you know what the research is saying is why are people leaving? I mean, I guess maybe.
Well, when you think about, so if they're graduating 2,000 credentials, so those could be the associates as well as the bachelor's, master's, etc. So think about all the places those engineers can go. There are many different industries, many different disciplines. But when we look at the full range of those credentials, and that includes chemistry, physics, electrical engineering, mechanical, all the full range, only 400 of them are employed in semiconductor related positions. So the industry is doing a great deal of recruitment from out of the state. And as I said, we will never eliminate that because, as Courtney well knows, they hire the most brilliant minds anywhere in the world. And you know this as well. So, but it is an opportunity to make sure that more Oregonians are, first of all, entering into those critical STEM related fields in general, and that they know about semiconductors, that they know that this is an exciting opportunity among all the other kinds of engineering jobs that they could take.
Yeah, we do find that it's easier to take a semi-skill set to other industries in tech. It's harder to bring it in the semi, so.
Yeah. And we've been thinking about that alignment as well, because this industry is also very cyclical.
Sure.
And in some ways, we're doing this work at a time when there's not a lot of hiring going on. But so at those times, we're preparing for the rush that will come, and also thinking about where is that alignment so that we can have a healthier economy overall as we have individuals who are skilled and ready to move, between industries.
And I can add the manufacturing consortium is focused more on the manufacturing workforce needs in the semiconductor sector. And they are talking a lot about transferable manufacturing skills so that we're thinking about a resilient workforce in manufacturing that can move between the different manufacturing sectors in Oregon. So it's absolutely something we're thinking about, but I hadn't heard that about transferability.
And it may be kind of, we're like deeper in the
Yeah.
where we are with.
Are you able to
Yeah.
elaborate on what that looks like in terms of the transferability of the skills and that inflow outflow?
Well, for us, we're in the EDA space. And so it's bringing those skills even in sometimes getting more technical down to, again, cellular levels, those kinds of things. It's easier if you're starting from that look to stay in, but to bring those other looks in and attract them is the other piece of this, because there's a lot of, cooler, sexier companies that might be out there other than kind of work that very deep design level.
Yep, and that's the other thing we keep our eyes on too, just in terms of beginning to hear companies say that employees are asking to transfer to Austin or the Bay Area. And we don't want that. Once they're here, we want to think about some of the other challenges that Oregon has. These all affect our talent development. So, all issues are connected. Yes.
I just wanted to add, to that question about transferable to which other industries, et cetera, piece of it. And we have an active recruitment right now for a business in the bioscience, life science industry. And one of the things that we talk with those companies about in those sectors is the workforce talent here and that relationship with semi. That you have folks that know what it means to work in a clean room, know what it means to work in an exacting science-based sort of industry that is very much about specific protocols and rigor. And that talent within semiconductor also transfers well to bio and life science, and maybe not as well back the other way, but there's certainly a relationship there. And I know colleagues at the city of Hillsborough are actively looking at how do they bolster both continue to support the semiconductor, well, frankly, throughout the whole state, but in particular, Washington County is really realized, but then also bio and life science as another key and critical industry sector for Oregon.
Great.
Yeah, thank you for the great transition.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
So just if those of you who are watching your agenda, you'll see that we're running behind a little bit, but we do not have Ben Cat here today. So I'm going to eat up some of that time. I'll provide a brief update on the STEM Investment Council in his absence, but it will be brief. So you'll hear from Brooke next, and then I'll give a brief update, and then we'll go into groups, and I'll give you a little bit of lay of the land before we do that. You can take a break at that point if you'd like. Well, you're welcome to take a break at any time, of course, but that will be a good opportunity to take a break. So we'll hear from Brooke, short update, and then move into our discussion groups, which is really the meat of this meeting, I think. Thank you, Brooke.
So before I move to my next slide, I just want to give a little context about why we came to be. So in 2021, Oregon passed one of the most aggressive decarbonization laws in the state, House Bill 2021, and it requires that electric utilities serve their customers with 100% clean electricity in Oregon by 2040. And so to get there, we were like, that's very aggressive. We got to do a lot of stuff. And then we really started thinking about how the electric sector in particular is reliant on, I like to say, we rely on a lot of other people to do their job well for us to do our job well. So we don't hire construction people to build new renewable energy facilities. We work with contractors to do that for us. But if those contractors don't have enough people, then that impacts our ability to deliver on those outcomes. So that was really kind of the beginning of where we started to have this conversation. And so after that law passed, I worked with our former Vice President of Human Resources, Ian Mercer, which some of you all know, and said, okay, I have this crazy idea. Just hear me out. I think we need this. And to her credit, she was like, let's try it and see what happens. And so that kind of led to the work that we've done now. So we convened the coalition in 2022. And since that time, we have kind of moved the work forward in a whole bunch of different ways. So I just wanted to tee that up before I get into launching. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And as Kyle noted, you're going to hear a lot of similar themes for our work, in particular, because there's a lot of alignment between the two things. So if we could go to the next slide. So our coalition, we have now more than 100 members across the state. And we really looked at who's connected to the energy sector in some way, shape, or form, and then made sure that they were invited to participate. And we have adopted this model that nothing about me without me. And so it's really important as we look at
workforce programming, policy needs, et cetera, that we're ensuring that the people who are most impacted by the things we're looking to do have a voice at the table. We've considered it, et cetera. The way that folks can participate is kind of a whole bunch of different ways, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to read this, just like Kyle's not going to read this, but in essence, our goal is to build an equitable and inclusive clean energy future in Oregon to meet House Bill 2021 requirements. We're at this very cool opportunity in the industry and within our state to say, what do we want the workforce to look like? And then how do we effectuate that? We're in, I would argue, one of the most rapidly changing environments and industries right now in a way where we know some workforce needs that we have because our industry has been around for a long time and some of those things are not going to change, like linemen, for example, and the work that they're doing. But then on the flip side, there's so much rapid technology that we also need to be able to plan for the workforce needs associated with that. Next slide, please. When we put this coalition together, one of the things that we really focused on was not reinventing wheels. I am a huge believer in there's a lot of really good work that's already happening. We do not need to create another thing that is doing the thing that is already happening, which in Oregon we love to do. And so when I started talking with people about how do we pull this together, that was my number one promise, was we're not going to create things that already are existing. And then secondly, we're not going to sit around a table and be like, yep, this is real bad, and then not do anything, which is also something that happens a lot in workforce spaces. And it is not unique to Oregon. But so that was the big one, was what is happening right now and what can we leverage that's happening? And then the second was, how do we create those economies of scale? So there may be something that's really great that's happening in Salem, Oregon, and somebody in Ontario, Oregon could benefit from the programming that's already been developed, and it's a plug and play, but the people in Ontario, Oregon don't know about what's happening in Salem, Oregon. So that was the second thing. The third thing was money. Kyle has been very successful with money. I am very proud of the money we have also been successful. And then the last was
we don't have ours yet.
That's true. Fair. And then the last was intentionality to remove barriers. So we did a workforce analysis last year with Echo Northwest and looked at who is in the energy sector today. And if you look at the kind of breadth of jobs that exist, generally speaking, at the higher wage jobs, you see predominantly white males. And then if you look at lower jobs, you see more disbursement of other populations. And so, and we know based on a whole bunch of research that we've done is people come into the energy sector largely, they kind of fall into it. So like they knew somebody who was in the job. That is how I got my job in the energy sector, right? Like I knew somebody who was retiring and I was like, oh, your job would be fun. I'm gonna apply for your job. And we have done, somebody in my team has done interviews with, I think she's up to like 170 people in PGE and outside of PGE. And that is a very consistent thing. It is, I knew somebody, I had a family member who was in the industry. You are not getting people who are like, I'm self-selecting to join the energy industry or utility. And that's problematic for us because we have a whole bunch of people who are eligible for retirement. We also have a growth curve that is pretty significant. And without getting people earlier in career, we're going to have this workforce deficit that's going to be really problematic. Next slide. So how we framed the coalition, and I think this is really important, is the coalition is not a direct service provider. We are not replacing the local workforce board system. And in fact, we leverage the local workforce board system. So the way that we think about the coalition is, how are we thinking about this from a state level? What are big gaps? How do we think about the things that may need to be effectuated across the entire workforce ecosystem to support the work? And then when we get into implementation, we are partnering with the local workforce boards who know their communities well. They're partnering with community-based organizations, et cetera. So it's really this partnership within the existing workforce system rather than replacing something that already exists. Next slide. And then we also created these committees to kind of help us. And I will say that in our third year, we actually just had our meeting a couple weeks ago at Andrew's new facility, which is lovely if you've not been. And we talked about, now is the time for us to really look at the subcommittees that we have. Are these still the right ones? Do we need to think about new ones? when we initially built these, we were really looking at, these are very specific portions of the energy sector, and they were very specific job types. And so we knew that for some people in the coalition, they really only cared about electric vehicles. And so they wanted to focus on like, how do we build the workforce for electric vehicles? They cared less about some of the other things. And so this was really intentional to allow people to engage in the thing that mattered most to them and not have to engage in a bigger, broader discussion if that wasn't of interest to them. And that was in part for capacity, but also because we really wanted to bring subject matter experts in within these different areas. And we wanted to make sure that they had capacity to be able to do that. So this is kind of the current structure, but essentially those committees are looking at what are the things that we need, right? Where are the gaps that we're seeing direct from an industry? Like, what are you seeing that is not happening right now? Where do you anticipate growth is going to go, et cetera? And then that gets rolled up into these two other subcommittees. One is the education subcommittee, which is like a little mini coalition at this point in time. I'll talk about that in a second. And then reducing barriers. Reducing barriers has focused a lot on engaging with community-based organizations in particular and hearing what the challenges the populations that they serve are experiencing. We also have been doing some work with various different community-based organizations and hearing directly from workers what are the things that you're experiencing. So ERCO has been doing some work for us in the Portland metro area. We're going to be doing some work in Central Oregon. So really hearing directly, like, are these jobs even of interest to you? And do you even know about them? And then what are your perceived and actual barriers? And I will say that a lot of people have no idea, right? So that, I mean, it is a huge challenge of just people don't know. To Kyle's similar point of people don't know about the semiconductor industry either. And then clean energy program area of study. This is something that is a coalition of folks who are really interested in the education component of our work. This is in partnership with Oregon Department of Ed, and it's being led by two co-chairs, the director of CTE for Portland Public Schools, and then Beaverton School District. And so it's looking at how do you create a specific area of focus for Oregon in CTE that is looking at energy. And right now energy is like sprinkled throughout a whole bunch of different areas, and this will have a much more focused kind of look as we move forward. They're working on a pilot that was funded by Lemelson with some teachers in this school year with the goal of doing a full implementation in the following school year. Next slide, and then the next slide. I want to do really quickly, just kind of high level, why this is important and matters. We have it called down here, but I'm going to call it out again because Andrew's in the room. Work Systems did a lot of really great work on clean energy job definition. And so part of our goal was to align with work that was happening with workforce boards in terms of alignment of how do you define a clean energy job. And so on the left-hand side, you have this need for increased non-emitting resources, right? That law that I was talking about before. And then you have all these different jobs that we have to kind of bring together in order to effectuate change that we need in the sector. Next slide. And the different categories are really broad. So I think most people, when they're thinking about the energy sector, they think about things like solar installer or electrician, but there are so many jobs. I mean, there's a very small number of jobs that we don't have in the energy sector that exist as a job. I mean, it is really broad. So part of the goal that we've been working through with our partners, and in particular, Daryl Lambert on Andrew's team, is how do we talk about this in a way that people can relate to it, right? So if you're a tree trimmer who is doing trimming trees around lines, you're part of the energy sector, right? So there's lots of different ways to kind of think about it in a way that is not traditional, how I think people mostly think about it. Next slide. And then this is kind of the continuum. And I think this is the piece that has really been the focal point that is unique in the work that we've done thus far. And we are looking at this system of workforce as basically cradle through employment, right? So how do we start thinking about getting exposure to youth at a younger age so that they're aware? If you ask, a kindergartner, they're going to tell you the jobs that they know about are a doctor and a firefighter and a police officer, and right? How do we get them to say alignment, right? maybe not, but how are we starting to think about like, what are those jobs? So they're starting to identify and hear about them. And then as we move through that continuum, then they have exposure opportunities. They have the ability to learn more about those jobs from industry. And then by the time that they get to launch into their next life outside of high school, they are thinking about what is that next pathway for me? And also thinking about the things that they're doing today help set them up for a job in the energy sector in a way that most people don't tie those skills together. So one of my very first jobs was to be an assistant manager at Gap Kids. I use those skills that I learned as a manager at Gap Kids today in my job. Right. So having people be able to think about those skills that they're learning is not like, I can go do this job and it will still help me lead to success in my future career, in my, what I would deem as my dream job. Next slide. And then I had all the ambitions to bring our annual report that we just finalized, and then I promptly forgot it. But we have been really successful in the work that we've done to date. We secured almost $4 million through the Department of Labor, and then through a separate private foundation through Jobs for the Future. We're doing some really exciting work as it relates to some programming at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility with a pre-apprenticeship program that helps those who are, in particular, women are enrolled in that program to connect to union apprenticeship programs upon release. It is the highlight of my day, week, month when I get to go speak to the students that are in each of the cohorts. They have to be within a year of release. They have to have good behavior, the three crafts that are cement masons, bricklayers, and then iron workers. And so they learn all three of those in a 12-week course. And then upon release, they get either preferred entry or direct entry into one of those three apprenticeship programs. And we now are seeing people being released and going into those programs. One of the graduates is working on the 205 bridge. She was just written up in Forbes magazine as part of our coalition's work through the Jobs for the Future CEO, which was super exciting. There's another one that went to the cement masons and is doing amazing work. So we're starting to see this really exciting momentum around giving those skills and then connecting it to jobs that are available. And I'm not going to read all this, but I'll make sure that Shauna has a final version of the report that we can send out. And then the last thing I wanted to kind of highlight was, if we could have the next slide, please. This work, which is the Jobs for the Future piece. So we have a goal of training and placing 5,000 workers within the energy sector in the next 3 years. And this is part of this challenge. We are one of 6 teams across the country that are focused on the energy sector broadly. We all have a little bit different focus. We are the only one that is statewide. And so our approach to this is we start with this awareness piece. Like I was saying before, most people have no idea that the energy sector is really a career pathway. So this is really doing this campaign around how do we make this exciting and interesting. And I do not have TikTok, but using things like TikTok to help create that viral interest is part of this campaign. And then the next piece is this website, which we're working on launching right now, that helps kind of create that connection of things that you do as a child and love to do as a child translates into jobs in the energy sector. So the campaign's called Do What You Love, and it shows somebody with Legos, and then that it translates into being a trades worker or being an engineer, right? So it's creating those connections of you actually can keep doing all the things you love to do when you were a child or even in your hobbies, and that translates into a job in the energy sector. And then we're also working on an online training program that will help, provide additional connections. And again, leveraging the existing resources within the workforce system. So if your archetype is a connector, and there's a whole bunch of different job types within that archetype. And then here's where you go, right? So like we can connect you to this resource that exists. We connect you to a work source center, whatever that looks like, and helping people have a really clear path. There is no place that exists today that shows you a specific location-based, where do you go, right? You got to know where to go based on a whole bunch of other places. And so our goal is to create a one-stop shop to make it easy for people. And then we're also doing a quality jobs training with employers, and that is in partnership with the workforce boards that in the Willamette Collaborative, who have been doing this work for the last several years. And then we get to that 5,000 number. So kind of what's next? We're continuing to build career pathways. This is a really important part of our work. And I will say that part of what we're really focusing on is how do we help people think about their career as a path and not like an A to B, especially in light of all the changes that are happening right now in the federal government, and really thinking about like if the economy is lower, then generally speaking, you'll see trades jobs go lower. So how can we help set up people's success? If your dream job is an electrician, what are the other things you can do now in order to help you be successful and be ready to apply for that electrician apprenticeship program when they have openings? And then we always are expanding our table. One of the things that has been foundational to this work, as I was saying before, is that nothing about me without me. And we have people at the table that we have never in the energy sector or in my company. And so bringing those voices to the table is so, so important. And then we're doing the pilots, as I mentioned before. So we have several different kind of pilots that we're trying things out. Part of this model is really focused on this idea that we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff and some of it's going to stick and some of it isn't going to stick. And then we try again. And the goal is that you figure out those snags and things that don't work on a smaller scale before you launch to a bigger scale. And then the last piece is hearing from communities around Oregon. So I mentioned those listening sessions that ERCO has already done, and then we're doing some additional ones throughout the next year with communities, again, to hear directly from workers, what are things that are being experienced, and what are the challenges associated with those things, and how can the work of the coalition really help set up those folks for success. So that's it. We just launched a LinkedIn page. It does not have a ton of content yet, but we would love for you to follow it when it becomes very robust, which is on my agenda for next month. And I would entertain any questions if you have any. Yes.
Have you determined what the lanes look like in the clean energy careers? So is there
Some. So what we have chosen to do is focus on archetypes, which puts together a whole bunch of different types of jobs into one. So versus, and I have a high schooler and a middle schooler, and my high schooler, who's a freshman, last year I can't remember which career assessment, but she did one career assessment. That child is the most linear thinker I think I've ever met in my life. She'd be an amazing engineer because she is just the way she thinks is very linear, and she has a lot of attributes, and I work with a lot of engineers. That test told her she should be an engineer, and she was like, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. And she shut down. She was like, I don't care what anything else says on this thing. I don't want to be an engineer. I have no desire to be an engineer. And so part of our strategy is to help folks go through kind of an initial assessment to say, what types of things do you like to do? And then that puts you in a category of jobs. So that category of jobs could have trades related stuff. It could have engineering. It could have, right? So there's a whole host of jobs within that based on the characteristics of that person, of the things they like to do. And then we go to the next level to say, okay, now do you like to work indoors or outdoors? Do you, right? Like what is the next level to help guide people? So that's the piece we're actively doing right now is how do we take data that exists, right? Because again, we don't want to reinvent wheels and work it to fit into those categories so that people don't feel like they have to go directly to something that they are not necessarily interested in. Yeah.
Question, I guess, I'm interested in learning more, right? It looks like the work is K through 12 and CTE and not engaging in higher ed outside CTE?
Higher ed, definitely. Yep.
Okay.
We have lots,
So just not
yeah.
part of this presentation?
Yeah, they're not part, I will say we have higher ed involved in that CTE work group for certain.
Sure.
And they are a critical part of the education subcommittee. So that continuum is really K through 12, but then how do you connect what the next steps are? So union apprenticeship programs, is it
Right.
4-year, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking from the OSU perspective where clean energy solutions is one of the
Yep.
call outs of our
Yep.
strategic plan. And so how do we think about advancing or connecting space in the same way that we are working to connect in the
Yeah, absolutely.
and other universities too.
Yeah.
I just want to make a comment. Thank you. I always learn so much from taking copious notes. You're like, wow. But you know, the thing, this is a comment is more than a question perhaps, but I love the work you're doing around, especially that exposure, helping explain it. Your daughter who said like, I'm not going to be an engineer, you know, and I think we're trying to do that as well. We just launched through the FAST effort, a website called semicentral.org. So check it out. Does the same sort of, what do you love? You know, I like grades cars, and then the Semi Foundation at the national level has done that. But it occurs to me that there's a role for the state to play so that somehow, I know in some ways perhaps we compete for that attention, but that doesn't seem like the right way to solve the problem in my mind.
Yep.
So thinking about how can we think about that at the state level so that we're exposing, engaging, and helping young people, you know, see, oh, this is clean energy, or there's semiconductors, or the forestry group that just recently presented it. So it just makes me think about
interpret that. Essentially, it's prioritizing the understanding of students being able to self-guide themselves through the schooling process, through understanding transcripts, understanding what they are studying and where it translates into like future opportunities. It really revolves around what is called the education plan and profile. That's a previous requirement of previous legislation that requires each student to do it, but it kind of emphasizes within that education plan and profile them thinking beyond their 4 years at the high school level. So in terms of embedding like career exploration, it's a very general overview within that credit, with the idea that maybe regions and districts can emphasize what they are providing at their level. So every district's going to have different pathways in different CTE programs to study. As Brooke mentioned, right, this pilot with Portland and Beaverton. So within their district, that could be something they could incorporate within that plan and profile and that half credit. But that also might not look the same in the South Coast or in Eastern Oregon and things like that. A lot of districts right now are embedding that half credit within what a lot of schools do, which is called like an advisory period, or where they have it like once a week, and then those students are it kind of fulfills all of those other general requirements versus a standalone class. Others are doing it in things like a senior seminar, or an entrepreneurs class that's required sometime like in their junior or senior year. But the career exploration component is definitely something that's spelled out in legislation. And I think particularly with finding industry partners, because that's the key, is industry and post-secondary partners. I think that's something that can be, like if the pilot is successful with Portland and Beaverton, could be a model for other districts to look at and say, okay, maybe the energy sector is one we want to partner with, but what are maybe some local industries that we have that we think would be a good partner for us to incorporate and embed within that career and college exploration half credit time that those students have.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is something, oh,
I
Ronan?
have a question for Brooke,
Oh, okay.
virtual member, Deb Hill. How is the CTE Clean Energy Program of Study engaging with community colleges to ensure dual credit accreditation by any school that teaches the course?
Great question. Dual credit is a critical component of the work that we are exploring through our partnership with Jobs for the Future. They have been doing a lot of work in this kind of exploration of dual credit, college, like what does that look like and how do those two things interface? So that's definitely something we have as one of the priorities is how do we make sure that we're thinking about what that next step is and applicability. One of the modules that we have is around kind of the trades component. And so thinking about what are the skills that are applicable that could be taught in a high school environment that then translate into the trades. And not surprisingly, like essential employability skills are high on that list based on our conversations with some of the unions yesterday. But those things of like showing up on time and doing some of those other things are things that they are seeing as a challenge, which is not unique, obviously, to the trade. So we are really looking at how do we of not only dual credit potential within the higher ed system, but then also creating something that's applicable and transferable to the trades as well.
Thank you. So just a short summary of the STEM Investment Council. So I joined in July. Director Cannon asked me to serve as the HEC representative on that council. Kyle also participates, as does Deb Hill. And right now we're in the middle of revising the STEM education plan, which is we revised every 4 years. So this is the first revision. We've done a lot of listening sessions with partners. And now we're working as a larger body to start to collate that information and figure out what the next steps are. The legislation says that we need to look at improving proficiency and in K through 12 math and science, which everyone in this room knows is a challenge. And then also increasing the in STEM in post-secondary ed. And that's, the legislation says degrees, but any credential, in my mind anyway, serves the purpose. So when we get that plan worked out, then I'll ask Ben Cat to come give y'all an update and tell you what that looks like for the next 4 years. Okay, and with that, so I really want to spend as much time as we can in our group. So let's say until 11:35 or so. And what I've done is I've asked Skip and Brooke and Kyle to lead 3 discussion groups. And I've assigned note keepers and timekeepers from HEC staff for each of you. And so Shonda, right here, she'll work with you, Skip, and then Eleni back there, she'll work with you, Brooke, and then Kyle, you have Diane, which you two need to meet anyway, because Diane is our new manufacturing consortium strategist. And she just started last week, so this will be a chance for you two to meet. And then I went through the attendees here and I tried to create each group that was diverse. So you had education and industry. With Skip, I put Eric, Courtney, and Jeff. I have Wade, Cassie, Amy, and Matt. And then with Kyle, I have Andrew, Corinne, Joe, and Steve. Okay. And so they have discussion questions and I'll come check in on you, but let's say 11:35. Oh, good question. Do you know where you're going? This is not a bigger group. So I think if we just go to the different corners of the room, the room is really long. Someone could go back there. Someone could go to the front, something like that. Be creative. If it's too noisy, there's a room we can unlock and use. Okay, so
Yeah.
we have people who have been voluntold. And so we'll start there. See,
Yeah.
there is still food in the back, so.
Even if
Not pizza though. I heard pizza. You brought up pizza. There's no
that's
pizza.
the high school size.
Yeah.
32 inches.
Okay, so let's start with Andrew. Why don't you kick us off? So what I'm looking for is just the rows to the top and share out with the group. And then we have note takers, so I'll collect all the notes. I'll write something up and then I'll share it back out and we'll follow up on this in our next meeting, but Andrew, kick us off.
I'm part of Kyle's team. We had a great discussion. I guess I would just say that, or I think it's heartening when you sit around with a group of people from varied backgrounds and areas of work, but you're all super passionate about these issues. So I think that bodes well for us moving forward. So that's good. I think the other thing, we didn't really say it, but I think we all know it, is like we're living in extraordinary times that, you know, whether it's, you know, financial challenges or technological changes, these are just really sort of unprecedented times. And so there's a lot of unknown, I think, and there's a lot of trepidation about trying to make predictions that might not hold true in the not too distant. Yeah, I think that I kind of get that sense everywhere. But one thing I think in terms of this consortium is really, I think we all think that we need a better, more efficient way to engage industry and to listen to industry, and to do it in a way that works for industry, but also works for the workforce education enterprise, so that we're better preparing people for opportunities that emerge as these challenges and these opportunities continue to change. So really trying to establish the consortium as the go-to place for industry engagement and input, so that we at the education and the workforce side of the coin really are listening and then sort of doing the interpretation. I think we heard from higher ed folks, you know, and I think we all that are involved in the sort of the public and the education side have a tendency to want to talk about how challenging it is in our sectors to make change or to, you know, implement new ideas or whatever. But I think that can be a turnoff for industry because they have a job to do themselves. And so really trying to create an environment where we're primarily listening and industry feels confident that people are there listening and then are going to turn around to their world and make the changes or the you know, sort of suggestions that they can to move us forward. Because of the uncertainty related, I think, primarily to AI and emergent technologies and even the economy in general, I guess I would say, I think there was a general agreement that sort of hunkering down around those essential and foundational skills that we know are so critical, and maybe, you know, adding to those. I actually wrote Skip a note because the essential employability skills, which are sort of coming out, and I've been in this work for like 30 years and I hear the same thing from industry. It's like, we need someone that shows up and can work as a member of the team and is, you know, flexible and whatever.
Right.
And digital literacy is part of that essential skills environment. So how does AI fit into that notion of an essential skill, and what is it, and how do we make it happen to scale? And I think that's the final thing I would say, is that we need to figure out how to do this in a less decentralized way. We understand that education in Oregon particularly, we have 197 school districts. They all get to do it on their own. It's not working. And it doesn't work to bring things to scale, and it doesn't work to help us sort of be more responsive in a more rapid and evolving economy. And we have to figure that out. And it's I don't think it's any shade on education to say that. It's just, we need a different approach that really does allow us to do things not in a centralized way, recognizing that delivery might be different, but the competencies and the expectations should be the same. How you get there may shift if you're in Medford versus Portland, but the competencies don't change. And so.
Those are two excellent points. And well, do you want to add? Does your group want to add anything? Anybody you want to add?
I heard that was really well.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah.
But I want to circle back to your first point, because Todd and I had a conversation about this yesterday of the importance of listening to people, taking what they say where you can into action, and then reporting back. So it feels like you were heard, we took action, we reported back. Because sometimes we don't close that loop, and then it feels really frustrating and it's hard to get greater participation. So I think, like, including with this consortium, like, I'm listening to you. I will, take what you have and I'll report back. So I think that that's really important to take action. We can't solve everything, but there are things we can take action on, and when we can, we should. And also, like, I really would like to figure out how to work better across all these different bodies, right? So this is maybe a first step to figuring out how we can do that. Brooke, do you want to share out?
So we talked a lot about the things that are wrong with the workforce and education system, but we did have some also things that we recommended. So one of the things we talked about was the need for education to other people in children's lives beyond the child. So parents, career counselors, etc., so that they're aware of career pathways that exist, because oftentimes they are heavily influential in the child's decision making, and so making sure that they're aware of career pathways. And then also looking at the opportunities to collaborate that exist across industries, and creating like some sort of Venn diagram of some sort, or something that, like, for example, in our industry, we have heavily reliance on construction related trades, but those construction related trades are not unique to the energy industry, right? They're also building houses and buildings and other things. And so are there opportunities for us to leverage kind of awareness campaigns, et cetera, that benefit multiple industries rather than only being one? And then we also talked about this partnership between higher ed and economic development, which Lane is doing really well. And so are there opportunities to think about that across the state, where you are making that more intentional connection between the workforce kind of system and then economic development, and that becomes a strategy to attract business to the state. And then the last thing we talked about was the junior achievement model. I don't know if everybody's familiar with junior achievement. It's the most amazing little town.
All of them, when we were talking about where to do more inspiring on career path.
Yeah.
We've been, are you in their space in Pittsburgh? In
Yeah.
Pittsburgh? Yeah, we are
Yeah.
too. And so
it's an amazing, my one of my kids like had a field trip to do it, but it did very cool. So it's basically a town. And the classroom goes in for a day, everybody gets a job, and you go and see how a town works. And the idea is, I think it's primarily focused on budgeting, but you are also learning a whole bunch of other things. And so can you take that same model and expand types of industries so that kids are starting to think about how the system is all connected together? And I shared that for the energy industry, we're looking at doing that model with like the Richard Scarry book model, where it's like, here's a little.
I was thinking.
Yeah, people. Yeah, that's what I know. Yeah, so we were like, I said this in a meeting, and our designers were like, what are you talking about? And then I was like, here's what it looks like. But the idea that like you show all the connections of like different types of jobs within a community, because then it shows the interconnectedness of them. So obviously that expands beyond technology, but showing that there's all this crossover in the different types of jobs within a community. So those were the big things we talked about.
That's
Did I forget
great.
anything else?
Matt gave you a thumbs up. No, I love that. The Richard Scarry. I haven't thought about Richard Scarry for a long time, and now like that's a great, like that's gonna be in my head. I love that.
I don't think they do it. I don't think it's like a thing anymore, because my younger employees had no idea what I was talking about.
Yeah.
There's nothing cuter than a lineman that's a rabbit, like
Hey.
that's awesome. Okay, and I know you guys were gonna split the report out, right, Jeff and Skip, so he's eating, so it's.
Yeah, so I would say definitely fell along a lot of the same themes, but definitely kind of playing off of what Andrew was saying. We talked a lot about leveraging industry voices. So one of the things that we had kind of a specific idea around was leveraging industry voices around the challenge with like internships. and being able to place individuals in like work-based learning experiences.
Yeah.
And so how could we bring in like the voice of like Bowley to hear both from industry, what are some of the challenges that industry has in terms of concerns with liability and things like that, and then the challenges that education has, and kind of finding a more streamlined system. We see pockets of individual success, but is there a way to look at it to create a greater maybe like statewide approach that allows to open up those doors more and maybe relieve some of the liability from both education and industry to create those opportunities. We talked a lot about leveraging industry's voice when it comes to higher education, like curricular decisions around their certifications, their credentials, their degrees that are directly lead into some of these industries. Because over the couple of years, we've heard from industry a lack of feeling like the particular skill sets that are needed are not translating with the degree and those that are coming in. So how do we leverage industry voice for those decisions? And then also scaling it into the idea of higher education's development of educator preparation programs, so that our educators that are coming out to work with our students are have a better ability to empower STEM skills, to empower the idea of career-connected learning, and are thinking about a new generation of learner and a new generation of learner who's going into a new generation of career pathways. Right. And if what we're doing is preparing educators the same way we have been for the last for a long time, that doesn't mean that our students are being prepared that way. So how do we leverage industry voices to say, this is what we really need to be seeing our educators being prepared to do when they work with students coming out? We talked about using this consortium to really help both industry and education stay ahead of AI trends over the next 2 years. So if our goals are looking at the next 2 years, understanding that rapid evolvement. Right now, generative AI is very much in the forefront, but we're already starting to get into reasoning-based AI and other forms of that. And understanding for both industry and educational needs, the underlying core of not just how to use an AI tool, but how does that AI tool work? So actually understanding the science behind AI and being able to look at all the implications. So it's not just reliant on individuals that are learning how to use a tool, but I think the term we used was human talent with AI literacy, so that we're understanding the human factor that is needed for these careers and not just looking at it as someone that understands it from a tool standpoint. And then I think the last thing we talked about was seeing what kind of leverage with industry there is to help with the creation of resources that could be like educational supplemental resources. Things that we've seen like from Intel, what they've done at the community college level, but they could be scaled to support like K-12 educators, especially in STEM, could be scaled to something that could be deliverable for like STEM hubs to work with the districts and the educational partners in their region. Because what we're hearing from our educators is they don't have the time to vet and understand the resources that can be used to teach these. They know they need to teach it, but they don't know where to go to turn to get a 4-week module that can be incorporated and embedded. And so how could we maybe leverage some of the resources that industry has to turn around that they use with their own workforce talent development and their own upskilling, but then we could then try to scale and make it a little bit more digestible for the educational purposes.
And related to that, this is like a key goal of the initial MOU between the governor and NVIDIA, where the hope is that a lot of other industry partners come in with their ideas of like, here's where we think AI is headed, here are the resources that we have available, and essentially building out more of essentially a portfolio in Oregon that's available to folks trying to navigate career-wise or education-wise.
Yeah. It's changing so rapidly. I have a question on the internship. So those works programs, like I live in McMinnville, so there's McMinnville Works, there's Clatsop Works. Like how are they in terms of giving students an opportunity to try a specific, occupation? Like has anyone leveraged those programs?
I think it's a really strong model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it is dependent on the industry. Because I had some when I was at the board and it was really challenging because there just wasn't enough to give the youth the opportunity to really like explore jobs. And you don't want to have youth come in and just file papers like that, you know, and so that was the challenge, was there was a lot of things they couldn't do because of their age, which created additional barriers.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, under 18, it's difficult to put young people on certain sites, so.
I would say actually it's the age piece that's an issue. If we could work as a state on how we're gonna push that age to 16. I think in the long run, this may become necessary for 16-year-olds in the state to have a pathway to do things we consider used to be just 18-year-olds. And because it's a huge structural impediment. And especially if the education system ever changes, kids want to go to work at 16.
And that's where we kind of talk about BOLI being maybe an individual player that could be maybe a part moving forward, because we feel like they're kind of the key commission in helping us to find a way to maybe be less regionally dependent on an industry willing to work with an educational entity and having more of a foundational statewide acceptable.
I think it's also the wraparound supports for the employer though, because I mean, we've done a lot of work to support college intern at PGE, but it takes somebody who is like helping the hiring manager be like, what are the goals you want them to accomplish? How are you gonna help it, right? Like, so you need those, because having a high school or college intern is very different than having a full-time employee.
I'm sure that's true, yeah.
That's why I like part of what you're talking about, focusing on the educators, you know, whether it's the pre-service educators before they're teaching, or I know we're putting together an externship program for educators and for the semiconductor industry. Again, because the internship, while it's wonderful in theory, you know, we're talking about all the reasons it's really challenging. And it's also limiting. I mean, we'll never be able to provide internships for all the students. So when we think about the educators and help them with materials and curriculum and different experiences, then they can impact so many of their students. And we have to think about how to strengthen all those connections. But I think focusing on the educators and counselors and, you know, parents where appropriate, we're also going and thinking about the educators in our community-based organizations, because they're providing so much of this work with their young people. So that's one way we're trying to get at that.
Well, thank you all. We're getting close to noon, but I appreciate all of the really great discussion. It was making me flash back to my teacher days, like walking around and over list. That's like my favorite part always, right? Is listening to all these ideas bubble up. And so I appreciate you all being here and spending your time with us and contributing. Ronan, will you go to the final slide? So the next point, we need to set our Q1, our meeting dates for the next year. It's looking like the next meeting will probably be, I would say, late February, early March, but you'll hear from me before then. So I'll take this information, I'll summarize it, I'll send it out. Brooke, if you have that final report you'd like me to share, I'll share that out as well. Then opportunity mapping, the occupational guides, we're going to take the next step in the next year. So we looked at the gaps, and now we're going to start looking at the supply by region. A strategic plan, that's what we're working on. So you can look forward to more of this. And then we'll discuss Future Ready Oregon project activities. So what do you want to learn? We have this huge database, literally now, of all these grants and all these people and all these things we've learned. We'll ask you what you want to learn from that great big body of work. Okay, any questions on any of that? Okay, again, thank you for your time today, and I'll be in touch for sure. Thank you.